Hi, thank you for clicking on this video, first of all. This is my first YouTube video, so I'm not entirely sure how to do an intro, but yeah, welcome to Beanim, that's the channel, and me, I am Bean. I hope you stick around and enjoy some watercolour art. So currently, as you can see, I am setting out my paintbrushes. I have this little pencil case type thing that my partner gave me that I keep all of my paintbrushes and things in. I like to set them out in height and size order just because I think it makes it easier for me to grab the paintbrush that I think will be best for the part of the painting that I am working on. So it just means I can see what I'm doing. So yeah, this painting that I am painting today, or have already painted but you're seeing it today, is a painting of Princess Mononoke, the Studio Ghibli film, and above that of course is a wee depiction of Spirited Away. Obviously you just saw me open the paints that I'm using as well. I'm using Paul Rubens transparent watercolours, which is something that I'm going to talk about a little bit in this video. But yeah, just to like set up, I always have my paints on, I don't know why I've always got my paints on my left hand side, but yeah, I've always got my paints on my left hand side, brushes on my right. I think it's just because I'm right handed and I like to grab my paintbrushes easily, and a little paper towel so that I'm able to dab any excess water and pigment if I think that it's either too wet or too pigmented for the first layers that I'm working on. So yeah, the paints that I'm using, as I said, are Paul Rubens paints. And this particular sketchbook that I'm working in isn't a particularly expensive sketchbook. I think, if I remember correctly, I got it in like a sale in one of the art shops in my local town. It really didn't cost all that much, so the paper isn't fantastic quality, but the paints themselves are absolutely fantastic. I actually watched a few YouTube videos, and that is what inspired me to get these particular paints, because I've actually never owned professional artist grade watercolour paints, or artist grade paints for that matter, and from using these I realised how important paint quality actually is for when you're creating like a piece, whether it's something fun or it's something more serious, because I would use paints that I would get in like, you know, like normal stores, like in Scotland we've got like Tesco's and all that kind of stuff, like WH Smith. I would get my watercolour paints from places like those and not actual art shops, or order them online, but I would never particularly gravitate towards anything that expensive. That's partly just because I couldn't afford them, but also just because I didn't really think that it was necessary. I remember being in high school and being told that if you're a good artist you can make like any quality of paint or pencil or whatever it is that your medium is. If you're a good artist then you're able to make it work, but obviously that's not the best sentiment to go with, because using paints that are of good quality make the process particularly more enjoyable, or at least that's what I have found so far whilst using these paints, because I've painted so much more recently. I mean, that might be due to the global pandemic, but yeah, I've been painting so much more since buying these paints, just because I've really enjoyed the way they apply to the paper, and considering that my paper isn't very high quality and it's multi-purpose, so it's not only made for watercolour. So yeah, I've really been enjoying painting and the process of it, having more expensive paints. I'm really looking forward to possibly getting more expensive watercolour paper. Obviously I don't want to waste this sketchbook, so I'm going to continue in this sketchbook until it's finished, but my next goal will probably to buy more expensive paper. I also need to do a bit of research on paper, because I kind of sound like I know what I'm doing, but I have absolutely no idea. I'm quite new to the watercolour world, but yeah, so far you have seen me be painting the background. Basically what I did was obviously I sketched out the two figures, and then in the background I put in pencil. So I was using, when you're working with watercolors, you want to use a pencil that's in the H range, so like a 2H, 3H, and I'm pretty sure I used a 3H pencil in the background of this, and just mapped out the rough shapes. So I didn't draw every individual leaf, I just mapped out the rough shapes that would be in the background, and then filled them in with a block colour. The particular colour that I used for each of the backgrounds was a lot lighter than the actual colours of the details that would be put in later on. So the colour of the sky was a lot lighter than the shading that I've put in near the bottom of the figures, and that's the same with the background of the leaves. The background colour that I chose actually isn't really seen in the inspiration image that I was using to paint this, but having that background allows you to build on top of the layers and create the detail that you want without leaving any white space or leaving any pencil showing through. So that's why I would, obviously if you're painting with watercolours, encourage you doing block colours first and then building in detail, as opposed to trying to do detail straight away. But obviously you do you, like there's no rules to painting, paint how you feel comfortable, and paint how you know best. That's just how I know best with watercolours, because obviously I'm not trained at all. I've not done any courses in art or watercolour, so everything that I do is self-taught from either watching YouTube videos or researching online and reading and stuff like that. So everything that I'm doing just now obviously isn't set in stone. Like, you can do however you want. Also previously you saw me take a pencil and rub out some of the lines that I use. So obviously it doesn't matter so much for the leaves, because the leaves are quite detailed, but for the sky there was a distinct line between the blue fading into the white clouds, and you saw me rub that out, and that just creates a much smoother base to work with later on if I was adding any more shading. So just now I'm currently shading the wolf, and the wolf I was so worried about painting in the first place. Like, I really didn't want to start shading, just because whenever I've tried in the past to shade a wolf or like a white animal, it never ends up looking white. It always ends up looking grey or like a different colour to white. So I was really nervous trying to paint this, but I think it turned out okay. But like, I've still got a lot to learn and a lot to work on, but I think it turned out pretty alright near the end. Leaving the really white highlights of the paper, so leaving the paper exposed, that's another thing that you can do when using watercolours. Leaving paper as your lightest colour, so if you're working on a white watercolour base, leaving space with no paint at all is a really good way to add highlights, and that is something that I did for creating the highlights on this particular piece of paper, which really helped obviously convey that it is not a grey wolf, it is a white wolf. So as you can see, I just continued to shade the wolf. I actually made it quite a lot darker than the reference photo, just because I find that watercolours, obviously these particular watercolours dry quite transparent, but whenever you're working with watercolours, the colour that it goes onto the paper is not the colour that it's going to dry in, and it is the most infuriating thing in the world. But yeah, they just require a lot of layering, which is what happened with this wolf, and I just took a little bit of artistic liberty as well and just painted the way I wanted to paint it. So yeah, go back to a point I made earlier as well, though, about quality. One thing that I've not particularly found to be of great importance is paintbrush quality. So obviously it is important that you need to use like a good paintbrush, but I really don't think that good paintbrushes come with price. Like, obviously if you want to buy really expensive paintbrushes, then you're obviously more than welcome to. I'm not going to stop you buying expensive paintbrushes, but if I was to recommend anything that was to be expensive or on the more expensive end, it would be the paints or the paper that you're working on. The particular price of a brush I don't think matters too much. The brushes I'm actually using are one of my friend's paintbrushes that she got from Amazon, and they were really cheap, and it was in a pack, and they were really, really good, like really good for detail. So if you are wanting to start painting, whether that's with watercolour or acrylic or whatever it is that your medium is, really, if you're wanting to splash out on anything, I would splash out on paints, or I'd splash out on paper, but I wouldn't worry too much about brushes. Yeah, so as you can see, I had a bit of a struggle with the lighting. If you haven't been able to work out so far, I am from Scotland, and currently it's actually really sunny in Scotland. Funnily enough, we've had a few rainy days, but not too bad, just to get that stereotype out of the way. But yeah, the one day that I decided that today's the day I'm going to film properly my art and the process that I go through, it was extremely sunny outside, which meant that I went through a lot of different methods of trying to get the lighting correct. Also trying to use a glass of water, which obviously wasn't going to work because light shines through water. I'm incredibly smart. I actually have a canvas that, I don't know if anyone else gets this, but whenever I'm using a sketchbook, I'm not scared to paint or draw in a sketchbook because, you know, it's meant to have mistakes in it because it's a sketchbook. But whenever I get a canvas, I have no idea what I want to do with it because I get so scared that everything is so permanent on a canvas. So I used it to block out the light, and that was the use of my canvas today, and I think it did a very good job. So as you can see just now, I'm currently shading in the fur coat and clothing that she is wearing. So San, that was the character's name. She's wearing fur and just normal, I'm going to assume it's cotton, I have absolutely no idea, but trying to get the particular colour of this clothing was really hard, and I think it's something that I still really need to work on, trying to identify colouring. I think I did an okay job. I at first put quite a lot of yellow and it made quite a sandy tone, but I knew that the colour itself had maybe of a blue over undertone to it, so I had to mix in and do an overlay of that afterwards, and then use some dark browns just to get the shadows correct. I had a similar issue doing her skin, actually, now that I'm doing her skin. Her skin in the reference photo that I was using is a lot more olive toned, a little bit more muted, and the skin that I have obviously created on this is quite a lot more orange in hue, which I'm not too mad about. I didn't like it at the time, but because I'm quite new to watercolours, I wasn't entirely sure how to correct it properly. I did go in, I did add a bit of green, like a dark forest green, to it, and a little bit of blue just to try and mute it ever so slightly. But yeah, it's not the best colour that I could have got at the end as an end result. But that's just something that I can take on board and learn for later. Another thing as well that I found, obviously because I'm working with such small areas, it's really hard to get detail, and one of the things you need to do with watercolours is completely let a layer dry before painting on top of it, unless you're doing a wet on wet technique, and that's one of the things that I really need to work on doing. Like, I am so impatient, and I will just paint over like a wet layer wanting a really crisp line, and obviously that's not going to happen because it will just bleed, water bleeds into water, so that's something I need to work on for next time. And if I had done that, some of the lines in this particular painting would have been much cleaner, especially with the shadowing of her like arms and under her neck, and then obviously also on Moro the wolf, like her fur would have been a lot crisper if I had just let the layers dry, but I am too impatient for that. So as you can see, I'm just currently adding in like final details onto this. So just small things that are on the character, so like the colours of her headdress and on her face. The red on the markings on her face was actually quite hard to mix because it's quite a dark, it's almost a burgundy red, but it's not quite, there's still like a vibrancy to it, so that was quite fun trying to work out that colour. I really enjoyed the process of it, and this was like a really good learning curve. I think it's already better than the Spirited Away painting that you can see above it. That was one of the first like proper sit down and do watercolour using these Paul Rubin paints, and I think it's already much better. So yeah, this is the final painting. I'm just going to hold it up for you very badly so that you can see it and move it around, give you a little bit of an angle. Yeah, I've got a lot more to learn, but I'm happy with the final result. I really like the leaves in the background. I think they turned out the best on this, so yeah. My social medias, if you want to follow me, are Instagram and my email. So my Instagram is Beanham, just the same as my channel name, and if you want to email me, you can do that through Instagram by choosing the email section. But I will also leave a link to my social medias and my email if you would like to ask me any questions or ask for a commission or anything like that. So thank you for watching.